the boy had to pay a high penalty. In his credibility, he had to pay a high penalty in his acceptability. And then when the new evidence came out that supported everything that Larry Nichols had said, he finds himself, I think, probably in the position of knowing that he had been exonerated, but he has not been exonerated in the minds of the people generally, in my view. And he finds himself probably in the position of wondering where he goes now to get his good name back.
A lot of people wonder how Bill Clinton could control a state the size of Arkansas with the absolute authority that he did. It's not hard. You see, after 12 years, after kissing the people that have the money, Bill Clinton controlled the legal system. He controlled the judges. He controlled the attorneys. He controlled the banks.
It's just a small state, a one-party state. What tends to happen in small states like that, I think, is the longer the person remains governor, that I think the greater the abuses are. And I think the abuses were very, very widespread under Bill Clinton.
One thing that's very difficult for people to understand, Bill Clinton doesn't care about money. He cares about power. All he needed ADFA to do was to channel money to the big players financially. I got tickled when the reporters during the campaign came here. They were looking, trying to find out where Bill Clinton profited. He didn't. He profited by putting money into his friends' pockets.
The way they were doing these bond issues and just the whole political atmosphere, quite frankly, was a scandal. But that's the way things had historically been done in Arkansas.
But imagine this. Imagine the power this man has in Washington, D.C. Imagine what he can do to this nation if he gets that circle of power going there, as he did here. Nothing I can do, nothing you can do can stop it. Because he'll have the absolute power, and believe me, he will use it to have you investigated, to have you arrested, to have your company audited. No, that's what'll happen when his circle of power is complete. When I worked at ADFA, it was not uncommon for Bob Nash to call me up and say, hey, Nichols, the governor needs about $5 grand transferred to his travel account so he can go see his ladies. And we would at ADFA transfer $5,000 to $10,000 for him to go see his girlfriends in either L.A. or New York. He'd used so much travel money to go see women out of his regular travel budget, he would even have to borrow money from ADFA, not to mention the fact that ADFA's budget was not quite as scrutinized as the governor's budget. But he literally used money, ADFA money, the people of Arkansas, taxpayers' money, to conduct liaisons.
During the 1990 Arkansas gubernatorial race, Larry Nichols, in a last-ditch attempt to alert the public, boldly filed a lawsuit against Bill Clinton. As expected, the lawsuit was eventually quashed, sealed, and illegally dismissed by a Clinton-appointed judge. What Nichols didn't expect was a complete media blackout of the facts he presented.
Back in 1990, after all the damage they had done to me, I did something that most people wouldn't do in Arkansas. I sued Bill Clinton. Now, it's very important to note that in that lawsuit, I brought out the names of 5 women. On October the 19th, the only press conference I've ever held in my life was on the Capitol steps of Arkansas. Every news organization in Arkansas, newspaper, TV, radio, were there on the steps. I read the names of the 5 women. I read and talked about ADFA. No one had ever made such a cold, callous statement against Bill Clinton where he named the women. When I got through with the press conference, I went through the center door and I walked off with the camera crews with me, and I walked all the way to the end to the governor's office. And I left the press release right on the governor's secretary's desk. And not one bit of the press release made it into the local TV or the local newspapers anywhere. It didn't show up anywhere. The reason I tell you that is because in those days he had the circle of power complete in Arkansas.
Eventually, every allegation stemming from Nichols' 1990 lawsuit and press conference would prove valid regarding Clinton's taxpayer-financed sexual liaisons, his drug usage, and his criminal activities relating to ADFA and Whitewater. Gradually, the women who had carried on adulterous affairs with Clinton began to emerge. The first was Jennifer Flowers, who, like all those close to Clinton, was faced with a decision. Either keep quiet and receive a government job, or go public and face character assassination in the press. Betsy Wright, Clinton's former chief of staff, admitted she had been hired to conduct media smear campaigns against anyone planning to tell the truth about the governor's sexual habits. She was prepared to go after at least 26 women who had the potential of destroying Clinton's chance at the presidency.
During the 1992 presidential campaign, I was getting bludgeoned by the media because Jennifer Flowers had come out of my lawsuit. A man called me on the phone on a Monday. His name was Gary Johnson. He was an attorney. He told me that he felt bad because I was being bludgeoned, and he wanted to talk to me about handling my case. Well, I was craving an attorney, any attorney, to help me.
You know, I saw Larry out there doing battle, so to speak, on his own, and I felt like he needed some help.
I met him on a Tuesday. He was a special attorney. I didn't even know it. You see, he lived next door to Jennifer Flowers.
For security purposes, Gary Johnson had installed a video camera near the front door of his Quapaw Tower condominium.
Looking at someone in front of my door, it got a perfect shot of them in front of Jennifer Flowers' condominium. And it wasn't my intention ever to take pictures of Bill Clinton going in to see Jennifer Flowers. I could care less who Bill Clinton goes to see. But it just so happened she lived next door to me, and I mounted the camera there.
Guess what he caught on tape? Bill Clinton walking into Jennifer Flowers' apartment on numerous occasions with a key.
I actually saw him go into her condominium. It wasn't that I was standing there looking out my peephole watching Jennifer Flowers' condominium. It had nothing to do with Bill Clinton. It's just that I got the camera. I had the camera before Jennifer Flowers moved in. And when she moved in, she just happened to have some very interesting house guests.
Go back to 60 Minutes when Bill and Hillary were loving kisses. They stood up and lied, and Bill said that he had never been to her apartment, that he had only called her once from the kitchen and from his office. That's an absolute lie, and these tapes proved it.
The 60 Minutes interview had been designed specifically to save Clinton's campaign, not necessarily to get to the truth.
And they came to us because they were in big trouble in New Hampshire. They were about to lose right there, and they needed some first aid. They needed some bandaging. What they needed was a paramedic. So they came to us, and we did it, and that's what they wanted to do. When I told Tim Russert that I was persona non grata at the White House, he said, "Why?" I said, "The Jennifer Flowers interview." He said, "You got him the nomination." I said, "I know that." As far as I know from the conversations I've had, Bernie Nussbaum knew that, Gergen knows that, Lloyd Cutler certainly knows it because Lloyd had a hand in his coming on there that night. You know, it was strong medicine, the way I edited it. He was a very sick candidate. He needed very strong medicine. And I'm not in the business of doctoring candidates, but he got up out of a sickbed that night and walked to the nomination. And as I said to Mandy, you know, if I'd edited it your way, you know where you'd be today? You'd still be up in New Hampshire looking for the nomination. He became the candidate that night.
When the Jennifer Flowers story broke, that story was 100 times more creditable than the story that literally knocked Gary Hart out of the campaign.
I had been Jennifer Flowers' neighbor. I knew that Bill Clinton wasn't telling the truth about that. Bill Clinton, I think, would do just about anything to save his political hide. And people are really afraid to speak up about that whole situation with her. But I'm by no means the only one who saw Bill Clinton at Quapaw Tower. I mean, that was an open secret, and that he was seeing Jennifer Flowers.
He got threatening phone calls. He asked me, he said, "Well, they hurt me." I said, "Well, they hadn't hurt me." I don't know why I didn't worry more about that.
Basically what they said was, you mind your own business. And all it did was made me mad. I never thought in a million years that anybody would follow up on it.
We filed the request for the subpoenas on Thursday. Saturday morning, we found Gary Johnson beaten and left for dead. And without getting into gory details, both elbows were dislocated, his collarbones were broken, his spleen and his bladder were ruptured with holes the size of $50 in them. His nose, his sinus cavities were all crushed. He had been beaten by Clinton's people.
Were they very large?
Yes. Yes, they were.
Did they say, "Where's the tape"?
Yes, they asked me for the tape.
And what's sick is the man gave them the tapes, and then they went and broke his elbows, punctured his spleen, punctured his bladder.
They looked like state troopers, I'll say that. Clinton can be a very dangerous individual in the state of Arkansas.
In my lawsuit in 1990, I named the lady Sally Perdue as having an affair with Bill Clinton. Sally had an apartment in Little Rock, and the Clinton security guards would drop him off at her apartment and go park in the woods. When Clinton got through doing his business, he was flick their porch light and they'd know to come and get him. She started coming out, started talking. Well, believe it or not, before she could talk, Clinton's people got to her and offered her a federal job or break her legs, whichever one was the best.
Sally Perdue, former Miss Arkansas and radio talk show host, carried on a sexual relationship with Governor Clinton between August and December 1983. State troopers in government vehicles were used at taxpayer expense to shuttle Clinton back and forth to Sally's home. Perdue, who today supervises a home for people with Down syndrome, was offered a $60,000 a year federal job to keep quiet. She refused.
And you see, that's illegal. You can't offer a federal job to get someone to hush.
Following her attempt to go public, Miss Perdue lost her job and started receiving threatening phone calls and letters. Live ammunition was found on the seat of her car, and the rear window of her vehicle was shot out. Even though a number of witnesses have corroborated her story, the American press has refused to print it. During the 1992 presidential campaign, interviews with ABC and NBC, as well as an appearance on the Sally Jesse Raphael show, were taped, but were never aired.
She had actually been on the Sally Jesse Raphael show right after the New York primary. Did you know the TV stations around the country blacked out that program and wouldn't show it?
In December 1993, former bodyguards of Bill Clinton came forward with detailed information regarding the governor's sexual encounters with a number of women. Larry Patterson and Roger Perry, both veteran Arkansas troopers, boldly spoke on the record. Two other troopers who initially spoke off the record were later identified as Danny Ferguson and Ronnie Anderson. In April 1994, a fifth trooper, L.D. Brown, came forward and corroborated their stories, adding that Clinton's sexual partners numbered over 100 during the period he was employed by the governor. The trooper's official duties included approaching women to obtain their phone numbers for Clinton, driving him to rendezvous points in state vehicles, guarding him during sexual encounters, securing hotel rooms, and lying to Hillary about his whereabouts. Phone logs and other corroborating evidence fully backed these reports. During the period when the American Spectator magazine was preparing this story, its offices suffered 3 separate break-ins. They had never before been broken into in their 26-year history. In an attempt to silence the officers, the Clinton administration launched an elaborate counterattack, which included urging Ferguson to change his story and levying false accusations of insurance fraud against Perry and Patterson.
When Larry Patterson and Roger Perry came out, Clinton's security guards, they substantiated everything that I'd alleged in the lawsuit. These people were there, they were his bodyguards. But watch what happened. The same thing that happened to me, they planned to do to them. They roasted them in the media. They said they were committing insurance fraud.
The evidence of that these state policemen have brought forward relative to Clinton's womanizing, it's being questioned by the spin doctors as not being credible. Yet it is more credible than the evidence on 90% of the people who are confined now on death row across America.
Is this fair? Did y'all see the papers saying that the troopers were telling the truth and were found innocent? Heir to the stories they were telling have a basis, since they're not the scumbags that the spin doctors for Clinton tried to make them out to be?
These two have had the courage to come forward, and the evidence that they have presented has not only been credible, but it's been overwhelming. And the truth is, I'm convinced that it's just the tip of the iceberg.
On May 8, 1991, Paula Jones, a state employee with the Arkansas Industrial Development Commission, was working the registration desk for the governor's Quality Management Conference at the Excelsior Hotel. Governor Bill Clinton was to be the main speaker.
I was approached by one of Bill Clinton's bodyguards named Danny Ferguson, and I was given a number. And I asked him what it was. I held out my hand, and he said, it's a number to a hotel room that the governor would like to meet with me. Well, I was surprised, and I kind of talked it over with my coworker, and we didn't have any reason to believe that we couldn't trust him, so I agreed to go on up to the room and meet with Mr. Bill Clinton. I got to the room, and Governor Clinton, he opened the door to meet me. It was a room that did not have any beds in it. It had couches and stuff like that. It was more like a meeting type room. And he had asked me about my job and how I liked it and who my boss was, and I told him. And he mentioned that he liked the way that my curves were on my body, and he liked the way that my hair went down my back, the middle of my back. And then he tried to lean over, and he started to put his hand up my leg, which it happened so fast, and he tried to kiss me on the neck. It happened so fast, but he tried to bend over and kiss me on the neck as he was putting his hand up my leg, and I backed off. I said, I don't want to do this, and I said, I think I need to be going. And then he got up before I even knew it and dropped his pants, and Bill Clinton asked me to perform oral sex on him, which I declined, and I jumped up, and I told him I needed to go immediately. That's when he went to say, if you have any trouble whatsoever, you have Dave Harrington, your boss, contact me immediately. And I said, well, I'm leaving, and I started to proceed down the hall to the door, and he followed behind me. He said if we could try to keep this between ourselves. And I went down the elevator, went back to my registration desk, and I told Pam the whole story.
I can't understand how somebody can take advantage of somebody like that, and then they have the audacity to drop his pants. I mean, you know.
I'm not going to dignify this by commenting on it.
Paula gave the exclusive to the Washington Post, and Mike Isikoff, we were going to be as open as we could with the Washington Post. And Mike told Paula that as far as he was concerned, that he believed Paula, and that he thought the story should be told. And Mike said they were ready to put the story out, and they were going to go to the editors and present the story to him. We heard that Mike got suspended from the Washington Post, and there was a big fallout between the editors of the Washington Post and Mike.
Paula Jones filed a lawsuit against President Clinton, claiming sexual harassment. The same day, a massive media smear campaign against Paula Jones was launched.
Think about a man that has no more regard for women than Bill Clinton does. They're just sex things. I don't understand the feminist movement being behind Bill Clinton. He hangs women on his wall like trophies.
A number of women who have had sexual relationships with Bill Clinton have allegedly been given major career boosts in exchange for silence. Beth Colson received a judicial appointment to the Arkansas Court of Appeals from Clinton. Regina Blakely landed a job with CBS National in Washington covering the White House. Likewise, Deborah Mathis secured a lucrative job with the White House Press Corps. Susan Whitaker was made the liaison between the Arkansas State Capitol and the White House. Elizabeth Ward obtained a position with the Clintons' close friends, Hollywood producers Harry Thomason and Linda Bloodworth Thomason. And Joe Jenkins was given a high-level position with AP&L. One of the most harrowing stories of Clinton's attempt to keep his promiscuity hidden involves Jerry Parks, a private investigator and former chief of security for Clinton's campaign headquarters.
My father was Luther Gerald Parks, a.k.a. Jerry Parks. He was the head of Clinton's security for Clinton's inaugural campaign whenever he was running for president. My father was brutally murdered at Chenal Parkway and Arkansas Highway 10 in one of the most elite parts of Little Rock, Arkansas. Someone pulled aside alongside of him and started shooting at him. They cornered him, stopped him on Highway 10 as he was turning left onto Highway 10 off Chenal Parkway. They stepped out of the car after blocking his path. He was shot 5 times, once in the leg, once in the arm, 3 times in the chest. My father had a file on Bill Clinton's infidelity and his affairs that ran from approximately 82, 83 to somewhere between till about 90 to 91. The file consisted of pictures, time, dates, places of where Bill Clinton was at, where Roger Clinton was at, the type of drug use that Bill Clinton and Roger Clinton were involved in. I was the only person that would ever go with him when he would do his private investigative work. And I remember 4 to 5 times that I was with him, and that's what he was keying on. I saw Clinton with a lot of different women, a lot of different types, sizes, shapes, colors, one of them being Jennifer Flowers. You know, I was just like, wow. It was more neat than anything else that, you know, somebody that is this famous, this bigwig, can get away with this. This just blew my mind.
Shortly before Jerry's death, the phone lines at his home were cut, the security system was disconnected, and the Clinton files were stolen.
I believe my father was assassinated because he was the one link that could actually close everything and completely shut Clinton down. I feel that Bill Clinton had my father killed to save his political career. When I did contact Little Rock Special Investigative Services, they told me that they had been pulled off the case 3 weeks prior to that. That just blows my mind on how when I hear they're making progress, all of a sudden they're pulled off the case. Something's not right there.
Bill Clinton has been the way he is ever since I've known him. He hasn't changed. He will not change. People inside the White House today tell me that he's running sexcapades in and out of the White House like have never been there before. It's a disgrace to America.
If we had known his background, the people of Arkansas would have never elected him governor of this state. And I charge the media of this state for not doing their duty and exposing these things that have since become matters of fact.
He's a womanizing, dope-smoking, liar, and a draft dodger. I don't remember those being in the Constitution as exactly the model qualities we want in a president.
Voters who depend on the media for unbiased information regarding political candidates have been betrayed. Much of the information concerning ADFA, Whitewater, and Clinton's sexual promiscuity was known by the media as early as 1990, yet was kept hidden. The media's heavy pro-Clinton bias prior to the 1992 election was best summed up by Newsweek when they candidly stated, "Truth is, the press is willing to cut Clinton some slack because they like him and what he has to say." In May 1994, Newsweek added, "The national press has been restrained in its accounts of Bill Clinton's private life, and with good reason. Most of those who have made charges against him have been despicable people, jealous and stunted sorts."
What an indictment about the media. You knew the truth about Bill Clinton. You just didn't like George Bush. I know Bill Clinton, probably as well as anybody. We used to train him on how to look straight into a camera and lie through his teeth. And you see, part of Bill's pathological lying is the fact that we've taught him how to believe the lie that he's telling. And once he believes the lie, then he can sell it to you as the truth. The world is at risk when the Commander-in-Chief of the United States of America is a man that will look at another government, who will make trade deals and lie through his teeth.
Clinton could get us involved in a hopeless quagmire easily in Europe, in Africa, in North Korea, in any number of places, because not only of his ineptness and his lack of understanding, but his contempt for military things. This goes back at least as far as the 60s, in his college days, when he not only attended and participated in anti-American rallies, but organized them. And incidentally, those were not anti-war rallies. Those were anti-American rallies. He has no loyalty to this nation. He has no loyalty to its fighting men. He has not enough integrity to have any loyalty to its population. He knows how to say the right things, but he's lied for so long that I really don't think he knows the difference anymore between the lie and the truth.
The media has not been able to ascertain today that there's a human being sitting in the presidential chair of the United States of America that lies with everything he says. They still believe somehow in the office of the presidency. They still believe there's some integrity there.
Attempts to keep the criminal activities of Whitewater concealed from the public were largely successful prior to the 1992 election. After that, however, the raging Whitewater Rapids could no longer be contained. What the Clintons claimed as a simple money-losing investment was in actuality a series of complex business transactions and cover-ups, ultimately costing the American taxpayer more than $60 million.
When this is all over, it's going to be the same story we've been telling for 2 years. We made a bad investment, we lost money, and there's really not much more to add to it.
We have enforced higher standards against ethical conflicts than any previous administration.
Whitewater may have begun as a legitimate real estate venture, but it came to be used to skim, directly or indirectly, federally insured deposits from an S&L and a small business investment corporation. When each failed, the United States taxpayer became obligated to pick up the tab. 2, the family of the former governor of Arkansas received value from Whitewater well in excess of resources invested. 3, taxpayer guaranteed funds were in all likelihood used to benefit the campaign of a former governor. 4, the independence of the United States government's regulatory system has been flagrantly violated in an effort to protect a single American citizen.
People should not be able to raise questions and erode people's moral authority in this country.
It quickly became obvious that Whitewater would engulf the Clinton administration if ignored. A twofold counterattack was put into action. The first was to win sympathy from the conservative populace, who were among his chief critics. Clinton embarked on a series of appearances heartily promoting himself as a born-again Christian who supports and practices traditional biblical family values. While the uninformed may have been fooled, those who realized what was happening were outraged at the blatant hypocrisy.
This is a place where I have come to seek divine guidance and support and reassurance.
You know, after Bill Clinton was in office for 2 days, he signed 5 executive orders, shedding more innocent blood, the blood of innocent babies. Then he went on to try and get homosexuals in the military. He put Jocelyn Elders in, trying to distribute condoms to our kids. Christine Gebbe, his AIDS czarina, promoting all kinds of vileness. And yet he has not, Pastor Horn has not rebuked President Clinton. He's still in close contact with him. He still stands by him. Still says he's a great Christian man. This is an affront to heaven.
The second phase of the counterattack was to appoint Robert Fisk as special prosecutor to head up the investigation into Whitewater. That same week, the Rose law firm began shredding documents.
A lady came to me scared to death, wanted to come out and tell the truth. I said, what's the matter? She said, they're shredding documents at the Rose law firm. Well, I tried to tell the media. The media said there was no way that could be going on. Well, in came a journalist from a Washington newspaper. He goes over, investigates what I told him. And you know what? The very week he investigated, guess what they were doing? Shredding documents right there at the Rose law firm.
It had his initials pretty much all over it. Everything from the box to the manila files to, I even saw his signature on with the Rose firm letterhead.
You see, all of the Whitewater documents, they're getting rid of. They're getting rid of them as fast as they humanly can. It's the nerve and audacity that those two people, Bill and Hillary Clinton, have to shred documents, to destroy evidence in a federal case.
That is why we're here in front of the Rose law firm, because of the works of darkness that have gone on. Documents have been shredded here. What else has gone on here? I'm telling you, there are people inside this building that right now they're saying, if they only knew. If they only knew.
I've been very, very disappointed in the Clinton administration. Every time I think, well, now they're finally going to do something right, something comes out that proves they've been lying, and I just don't trust it anymore.
During that same week, there was also a fire at the Stevens-owned Worthen Bank building.
Now, this fire was on the 14th floor, and supposedly it was started by a space heater. I want you to look at this footage and tell me if you think it was an accidental fire by a space heater. This is a CPA firm, and the documents that were in this office were important documents relative to Whitewater. If you go back to Arkansas and you look at the Secretary of State's office, anybody that's ever run for office in recorded history, you can find out who their major campaign contributors are since day one, except for one person. Bill Clinton's records at the Secretary of State's office disappeared. You see, they did it then. They'll do it now. All the information pertinent to Whitewater, any notes left by Vince Foster, any personal documents that would lead anywhere to any type of criminal activity, they're just going to be destroyed.
Fisk's initial assignment was to quell rumors regarding the alleged suicide of Vince Foster. Foster was a senior partner with Hillary Clinton and Webb Hubbell at the Rose law firm prior to his appointment as White House deputy counsel.
In fact, he was handling the Clintons' personal legal matters while he was in the position of assistant to the president, in violation of a conflict of interest at that time.
A number of key questions remain in the death of Vince Foster. According to the official report, Mr. Foster shot himself in the mouth at Fort Marcy Park on July 20th, 1993. If this were true, there would have been large amounts of blood at the scene. However, initial paramedic reports indicate very little blood on or around the body. There was no gunpowder residue in his mouth or on his face, and there were no broken teeth or damaged lips. Initial reports also indicate there was no exit wound, yet, remarkably, no bullet was ever found. In addition, the gun was still in Foster's hand, which would be highly unlikely due to natural reflexes occurring in this type of suicide. Incredibly, the death was ruled a suicide before an autopsy or ballistics test had been performed. As expected, Bill Clinton has expressed no interest in finding out what really happened to his lifelong friend.
Any credible forensic pathologist will tell you in a second the man didn't shoot himself the way they describe it. Well, if he didn't shoot himself the way they describe it, then is it not murder?
In March 1994, the White House released a photograph which they claim proved beyond any doubt that Foster killed himself. However, the photo depicted the gun in Foster's right hand, even though he was left-handed. It also showed the body surrounded by brown leaves, yet Foster died in midsummer before leaves had begun to fall. And numerous reporters on the scene confirm there were no leaves on the ground. More puzzling is the fact that sources for the FBI and Park Police originally announced that no photos had been taken at the crime scene. Most disturbing was the reluctant admission by the White House 5 full months after the event occurred that 4 members of Clinton's staff had ransacked Foster's office the night he died.
Now that team consisted of Nussbaum, his personal secretary, Hillary Clinton's personal secretary, Patsy Thomason. They said it was for national security. Well, not any of those people would have that much interaction with national security. Let me tell you specifically why they were there. Nussbaum was there and his personal secretary to scour the office and to look for anything that he might have relative to Whitewater. Why on earth would Hillary's personal secretary be there? I mean, that makes no sense. What would she have to do with national security? She was there for one reason, and that was to check and see if there were any love notes or personal notes to Hillary from Vince. Patsy Thomason was the top aide for Dan Lester when he was running his company and doing all the dope. You can only say that she was there taking care of Dan Lester's interest in the White House.
As mentioned earlier, the Arkansas Development Finance Authority had been laundering its drug money through the Bank of Credit and Commerce International. BCCI, founded by Clinton's chief financial backer Jack Stevens, collapsed in the early 1990s. Millions of depositors and taxpayers lost billions of dollars, making it the worst banking scandal in history. Heading up BCCI was former Defense Secretary Clark Clifford. The overwhelming criminal charges against Clifford were eventually dismissed by President Clinton. The attorney for Clifford and BCCI was none other than Robert Fisk. Fisk knew that a thorough investigation of Whitewater would eventually lead to ADFA and his former client, BCCI. Fisk also knew he would never be able to complete his investigation since it is illegal to prosecute a former client. Fisk was not selected by the Justice Department to investigate Whitewater at all, but to simply subpoena documents and testimony, making sure they never see the light of day.
So you see, Robert Fisk is a scam. He knows that. He knows more than we do about what is legal and is not. He has one little trick. It's the power of subpoena. He gets anybody, any documents, anywhere that he can find, and he subpoenas those records. And they're never seen again.
Will those records be the same when they come out of their control as they were when they went into their control?
He's gone personally over to Congress, begging them not to have a congressional hearing because it would impede his investigation. It won't impede his investigation. It'll just bring forth the evidence to the public that he's trying to hide to cover for his buddies, Bill and Hillary Clinton.
The investigation of Whitewater is being handled by an independent special counsel whose appointment I supported. Our cooperation with that counsel has been total.
Remember, everything Mr. Fisk touches goes under the guise of the grand jury, and then it's sealed. That is not what the U.S. Constitution calls for.
Now think just for a moment. If there are papers that prove you did nothing wrong, then why would you destroy them so that they don't come out? Why would you hide behind subpoenas and the cloak of secrecy? No, see, Bill and Hillary Clinton have something to hide. And only through a congressional hearing does this nation have a snowball's chance of that truth coming to the light of day.
Fisk's duty in this entire situation is not to uncover the facts in this case, but to make sure that the lid is put on to the extent that none of this will be made known. That's the reason it's so imperative that the Congress of the United States rise to the occasion and meet their responsibilities to hold public hearings relative to this matter during this period of time, or this special prosecutor is going to sweep the entire thing under the rug and justice will never be done.
Today, threats and harassment continue against people who want to come forward and tell the truth. In February 1994, veteran journalist L.J. Davis was viciously beaten. His attacker stole pages from his notebook, which contained information about the inner workings of the Rose law firm. Ronald Rogers, who possessed important information about Bill Clinton, was killed in a suspicious plane crash just hours before his scheduled interview for this film. In May 1994, Kathy Ferguson, former wife of Clinton bodyguard Danny Ferguson, was found dead after telling co-workers that Paula Jones' allegations against Clinton were indeed true. Not surprisingly, her suspicious death was labeled a suicide.
There are lots of people that come to me that want to tell the truth. They come to me, but they're afraid. They're afraid of losing their jobs. They're afraid of family members or themselves being hurt. Don't be afraid anymore. Bill Clinton doesn't own the world. He doesn't scare me. He shouldn't scare you. I wish all of y'all would do what I've done. Stand up. Stand up for the country. I want my daughter to know that if you stand up and tell the truth, you're okay. Right now, all she sees, if you stand up and tell the truth, you'll be destroyed. If you're a pathological liar, lie through your teeth, every breath, hurt people needlessly, you'll get to be president. You don't want that. I don't want it. If I had anything to say to Bill Clinton, you know what it'd be? It's bound to be a great burden to walk around lying from one thing to another, to never tell the truth. Bill, tell the truth. Come clean. Oh, you may not get to be president, but the truth will set you free. It'll set all of us free, and it'll save the nation.
I've still not been accused of anything wrong because I haven't done anything wrong. And I'm not going to do anything wrong.